All right. This past Monday was International Women's Day, and you might be surprised to learn that its history goes all the way back to the early 1900s, a time of great expansion and turbulence in the newly industrialized world that saw booming population growth, civil unrest, and growing calls for equality for the rights of women. Hopefully, you won't be surprised to learn that we have several great examples of leadership in the fight for equality among the sexes within the ranks of our own club, dating back to the 80s when our club was part of the push to allow women to join Rotary as full-fledged members. I now welcome to the podium Seattle 4 member John Steckler to tell you more about one of them. John, if you please.
Thank you, President Jeff. Hello, my fellow Rotarians. Wow. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the Rotary Club of Seattle Member Spotlight Recognition Program once again. Our newest Member Spotlight for the month of March 2021 is Patricia Bostrom, Classification Law Practice. Now, Trish, as she likes to be called, joined the Rotary Club of Seattle 22 years ago. She was sponsored into our club by Teresa Jones and seconded by John Iverson. Trish is a very unique person to try and describe. You see, some people, they walk through life, and some people, they're focused on doing something impactful in their life, so they'll make a difference. And some people lead a life that is so full and so impactful, it could only be described as like chapters in a thriller novel. You know, the one where each chapter has a story, an impact, and a result. Well, that last one is the way how Trish Bostrom has led her life. So let me tell you about her through the chapters of her life. Chapter 1, Young Trish. Trish is a true Seattleite. She was born in Fauntleroy. Her mother loved the arts, and her father was the executive director of the downtown YMCA. Her dad was a competitive athlete. He held 15 international handball titles. He also held the key to the downtown YMCA. And he and Trish spent many a night after hours practicing her backhand and her forehand against the walls of the Y. This at the ripe old age of 7 and 8. Young little Trish is right there. Now, Trish has always had a love of tennis. You see, to Trish, when she is playing tennis, it's like she was dancing. Now, enter the late 60s, and Trish is off to high school at Chief Sealth. Hard to believe. But there were no girls' teams at this time. See, and what was odd was Trish was good enough to work out with the boys and play tennis with the boys, but she wasn't allowed to try out for the tennis team. For one reason, she was a girl. And Trish made it very clear that she did not accept this. Her outrage was considered unacceptable and completely out of line. And funny that many years later, the Seattle public school system would induct her into their Hall of Fame for her courage. Trish focused her frustration, her anger into her athletics and her academics, a practice she would employ many times in her life. Chapter 2, Look Out, UW. After high school, Trish started to look at colleges. Now, there were no women's tennis scholarships for college, so she at least focused on schools that had a varsity women's tennis team. Enter the University of Washington. Once again, Trish was experiencing the same story. She was good enough to work out with the guys, play tennis with the guys, but she couldn't play varsity tennis against the guys. She could only play varsity tennis against the girls. Now, that would have been okay, but the women's varsity tennis at the University of Washington was woefully underfunded. Now, when the men's team went to competitions, they flew in a plane, they stayed in a hotel, they got significant training, material support. And when the girls' teams traveled to a competition, they traveled in buses, they slept on the floor, and they received no on-site support. There was just no funding. And after her sophomore year, Trish was just ready to quit school and go on the international circuit. But her parents, they talked her out of it. Now, her dad also told her he had a friend by the name of Dan Cohen, who was an attorney. Maybe he could help her with her little problem with UW. And Trish went off to meet with him, and the two just hit it off. Don was so taken with the enthusiastic Trish that he agreed to take her case pro bono and defend her in a quality suit against the university. Don set up a pretrial hearing that also included a lot of pretrial promotion and awareness about what was going on in women's sports at the university. And interestingly enough, the university saw the logic in Trish's concerns and agreed to not only fully fund the women's sports, but also granted Trish her dream of trying out for the men's varsity team. Trish tried out for the team, but she didn't make it. It was then that she realized she had lost the battle, but won the war. Chapter 3, enter the pros. Now, when I say Trish is driven, I am not kidding. Throughout all that was going on in her college career, she took a heavy load and graduated early. Her plan was to take a couple of years off and play professional tennis. And boy, did she play. Trish traveled the country and the world. She played in Wimbledon, US Open, French Open, Australian Open, Japan Open, Bridgestone, a Final 8, the Spanish Open, and many, 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 many more. Now, she met a lot of famous people, but one of her favorites was Billie Jean King. Trish and Billie were not only friends, but competitive tennis players as well. Trish says she developed a lot of her tennis style after Billie's. And once, in 1977 at Wimbledon, Trish and her partner played doubles against Billie and her partner, and Trish won. It's pretty good bragging rights when you can say you not only played against Billie Jean King, but you beat her. And before she knew it, Trish's 2 years in the pros stretched into 8 years, and it was time for the next chapter in her life. Chapter 4, from the top to the bottom. Now, even though she was still in very, very good shape physically, Trish decided it was time to retire, go back to grad school, and pursue her dream of becoming a lawyer. Now, what's important to note is just how tough a thing this is to do. There are not a lot of old professional athletes. They retire young, usually due to an injury. It's a very difficult thing to give up the money, the spotlight but when you're injured, you don't have a choice. But Trish did have a choice. She was not injured, but she knew that this was the best next step in her life. And to make matters worse, she not only gave up the limelight when she was at the top, but she chose a field where she had to start at the bottom and as an attorney. Well, no surprise to anyone, she excelled. She attended law school in Dallas, Texas, and afterward immediately came back to Seattle. She went to work as a litigator at a local firm, and after a couple of years, went to work in international law at another firm. And 2 years after that, she tried her hand at in-house counsel. But it became very clear to Trish what she needed to do was open her own firm. So, in 1988, with the help of her brother Dick, Bostrom law offices opened their doors, and 33 years later, they are still going strong. Trish found her passion and her purpose. Chapter 5, enter Rotary. Well, besides the many talents already listed, Trish is also an accomplished musician. She plays the piano, the guitar, the ukulele, and of course, we all know her as the banjo-playing Rotarian. Trish became friends with John and Marley Iverson, who also share her love of music, and they, along with Teresa Jones, shared the love of Rotary with Trish 22 years ago. Trish tells me, it's so refreshing to come to Rotary and hear what good people are doing each week. She loves the intelligent people of Rotary. And of course, she loves playing with the Rotary Rogues. And for Trish, Rotary feeds her soul. Chapter 6, recognition. Trish has spent her entire life not being afraid to speak out against inequality. Now, this takes courage. And as we have seen, it's usually met with some anger and hatred. And Trish saw this, but it didn't deter her, and she didn't veer from her path. And today, that courage is being recognized for the benefits it has brought. Trish fought the University of Washington, and today, the university thanks her and recognizes her for helping to make them a better institution. In 1987, Trish was added to the University of Washington Hall of Fame, and in 2012, they added her to the Pac-12 Hall of Fame. And get this, in honor of the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment for the women's right to vote, USA Today recognized the top 10 women of every state in the Union. In Washington, this list included such names as Dixie Lee Ray, first female governor, Bertha Lander, the first female mayor, Bonnie Dunbar, the first female astronaut, Patty Murray, our first female senator, and Patricia Bostrom, a pioneering woman in sports who fought for gender equality in the 1960s. One of the top 10 women in Washington State in the last 100 years, and she's one of our fellow Rotarians. Wow. Chapter 6, What is next? I don't know. Trish hasn't written this chapter yet, but I'm sure it's going to be great. Here's what I do know. Trish Bostrom is one of the most courageous and inspirational persons I've ever had the pleasure to meet. It's no wonder she is our Seattle Rotary Spotlight Member of the Month. So fellow Rotarians, I present to you Patricia Bostrom, our very own Rotary champion. Now, if you have any questions you'd like to ask of Trish, please put them into the chat. Ken Grant will take you through them. But before we go to the questions, I'd like to open up the mic to Trish, and allow her to say a couple words to everybody here at Rotary. Trish, it's all yours.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, John. That was amazing. I gave all of this information to John, and look at, he put it all together. Extraordinary, extraordinary, John. Unbelievable. Thank you so much. And it's great to see everybody. You are the soul of Seattle and the world. So just so good to see all of you.
Well, Trish, congratulations. And John, thank you for that great overview. We're very proud of you, Trish, and the many women members of Seattle 4 who bring great skills, energy, and leadership to our club.